Who is the best Nuzlocker in the world? A couple months ago, I found myself pondering this question. From what I can tell, the community didn't really have an answer for about the first decade in Nuzlocking, before Pokemon Challenges took the scene by storm near the end of it. He attributed that title to himself for quite a few years, and while quite a lofty one, he certainly had the accomplishments to back it up, at least until a few other people started catching up. By the end of 2021, when I first joined the scene, Burrito had pretty soundly overtaken him. Over the years, and especially with Burrito's hiatus, in a phenomenon that I think gave more to the scene than it took away, there was a period where nobody really pulled ahead, a period that arguably has continued to the present day. I do have an answer to this question, and it's one that I figured out over the course of the 16 days I played the run you're about to see. Enjoy. Pokemon Vintage White is probably the hardest Generation 5 ROM hack out right now, and one I've had my eye on for a while. Its boss design is unlike anything I've played between Reborn, Renegade Platinum, Radical Red, or even Run and Bun. The closest comparison I can think of is Emerald Kaizo, with two twists. First, with this being a Generation 5 game, there will be some triple battles thrown into the mix. Second, and this is the main selling point of this game, Vintage White only features Pokemon from the first 3 generations and their cross-gen evolutions. To compensate for this limited encounter pool, Suicune, the creator of this hack, rebounds pretty much every encounter in the game with new stat lines, move pools, and even typings. I'm not usually that big a fan of the widespread type changes this hack revels in, but I don't see this hack as trying to quote-unquote fix mistakes the way something like Radical Red does. Instead, I'd pitch this game as a remix, a fun way to get something new out of familiar faces, such as Illumise being a bug psychic type with tinted lens, Pidgeot being an electric flying type with no guard, or Banette... We'll get back to Banette. We've got just about everything here, so let's not waste any time. This is my first attempt at a Vintage White Hardcore Nuzlocke. Part 1. Nuts and Bolts. Let's get going with starter selection, for which all my options are kind of amazing. Swampert has a 50-50 shot at Swift Swim, and even with the player having very limited access to weather moves and no access to weather abilities, Swampert could still definitely wreak havoc. Sceptile can have Technician, and with access to Fake Out and Dual Chop, it can output a lot of damage combined with amazing speed. As for Blaziken, well, Speed Boost is off the table for being absurdly broken, so to compensate, Suicune decided to give the chicken Sheer Force. Okay, what the hell. I end up picking Torchic, and Dragon's Breath here ends up having a nearly perfect attack stat. I'll admit to soft resetting, but I was only looking for an above-average Torchic. On to the rest of my early encounters. To replace the Elemental Monkeys, I get gifted the Dicer, the Cacnea, and Accumulatown, who will be useful throughout the run just by virtue of having Water Absorb. Route 1 gives me Mahogany, the Caterpie, who evolves immediately into an early game monster, even with a special attack dropping nature. After repelling my way through Route 2, Fishing in Striaton City rounds my Firewater Grasscora with Fish Stick the Squirtle, who will eventually evolve into Regenerator Water Dragon Blastoise. Finally, the Dreamy Yard rewards me with the Light Slinger the Staryu, who will evolve by level up once I'm through Lenora, who is this game's first true run killer. Before that though, I have to get through the first major threat of the run, and I'm not talking about Cress. This Waitress's Sudowoodo is, frankly, unfair for this point of the game. I couldn't really do much besides play into multiple crits with Squirtle, and I'm honestly relieved I made it through the first gym because Cress wasn't a challenge in the slightest. Now that Shaking Cress is unlocked, I backtrack to Route 2 and pick up Slime King's Slasher the Mudkip. I'm initially disappointed to see that not only is this a modest Mudkip, but one with Torrent instead of Swift Swim, but I realized two things pretty quickly. His IVs are great, and this is still Swampert. Wellspring Cave rewards me with a Sandshrew with massively buffed speed. I once again lose an ability 50-50, getting Sand Veil instead of Sand Force, and the Malnature does nothing but hurt Nekaka here, but he's still Sand Slash. The Doubles Grass in Route 3 hands me Blast Spider the Poochyena, notable as my first Dark-type and my first Intimidate Pokemon. Finally, I head west to Nacrene City to not Pinwheel Forest, yes, Suicune changed the name, and roll the Doubles Grass, looking to get myself a Tyrogue. Now, I did get what I was looking for, as Tyrogue did show up. I couldn't really catch that Tyrogue though, as it showed up alongside an offer I couldn't refuse. Welcome to the team, Umbra Regalia. Looking through other runs in this game and guides I've seen, I've come to realize that encountering Shuppet here was the Vintage White equivalent of finding Pilot. Not quite as extreme, but this encounter will be the linchpin keeping a player as inexperienced as me on my feet for a while. Protecting her is the top priority, but for now, she's a ghost type I just got access to before the normal type gym leader. Now, well, I've built her up. It's time to break down Lenore's fight piece by piece. She's got a team of 6 very threatening normal types, anchored by a normal ghost adaptability Kecleon. First up though, is her Laevateinn, and I have used the hell out of Shuppet's new ghost dark typing. After chipping it down with knockoff and burn damage, War Turtle protects on self-destruct, baiting in Lenore's biggest threat to my box, Girafarig. Coming at me with brutal power for this point of the game, a lot of bulk, and pretty great coverage. Nothing that switches into it outspeeds, and vice versa. When planning, I settled on stalling Girafarig out of Magical Leaf PP by switching between Shuppet and Butterfree, and that did work well at first, with Butterfree out-healing any non-crits with leftovers. Eventually, rather than using Psychic, Girafarig started going for Tri-Attack and Brick Break. I knew this meant that she was out of Psychic PP, but I didn't understand the full ramifications of this until I switched Bayonet in for the 14th time. Yeah, Girafarig didn't go for the next highest damage move in Butterfree. Instead, Psychic still got the flag for highest damage, and with the other moves tying for the highest score, Girafarig was clicking them randomly. I will no longer be able to complete the PP stall, and Girafarig is threatening an Oko on my entire team. At this point, I throw all sense of reliability out the window. Butterfree risks her crit to chip with Silverwind, and Sandslash straight up dodges a crit range to finish the job with Bulldoze. Vigoroth, normally a massive threat with a normal gym booster Retaliate, literally can't touch Shuppet. Quite unfortunately, I accidentally knock off the Legging Tail under Persian, making her an actual threat for once. Dragon's Breath switches in, and has to live this Fury Swipes, or the run is over. And the chicken holds! Shuppet forces Vigoroth to switch out again, this time catching her slacking on the switch with a burn. Slacking would normally be quite terrifying, but this one is Slow Start, a much worse ability in the hands of the enemy than even Truant. War Turtle 1v1s with the support from Shuppet and a timely crit into self-hit, finishing the job just in time before Slacking gets her act together. The anchor, Kecleon, finally hits the field, but that Mightyena I picked up switches in, skillfully dodges Paralysis, and takes the kill with a Dark Gem boosted Sucker Punch. With only Vigoroth left, there's no way for me to lose. Shuppet takes the kill, bringing me past the first run killer of the game. To Castelia City we go. Part 2. Will of the Waves. After making my way through Pinwheel Forest, I'm faced with a split that normally only opens up one encounter location, in the desert. However, Vintage White gives me 2 more. In addition to grabbing the Small Sting the Krabby on Route 4, who will evolve into a buffed Water Steel Kingler that unfortunately has Sheer Force instead of Shell Armor, I get a fossil which I revive into the Bone Zone, the Anorith, for my Nacrene City encounter, who doesn't have Battle Armor either. The last encounter of this split is the Lightning Rod, the Volbeat in Pinwheel Forest. Remember, the outside area is not Pinwheel Forest, who's a Bug Electric type with some neat moves. I would just skip to Burke from there, but something unexpected happens during the fight with the last gym trainer. I put my XP share on War Turtle throughout the gym, but Fishstick levels up to level 36, putting him over the level cap and incidentally causing him to evolve. Not that big of a deal, I wasn't bringing him to Burke. Instead, my early game encounters worked out such that I've got a good blueprint to follow for this fight's opening. There's a lot of threats in back, but I hopefully have good answers to all of them. Burke is the first of this game's 3 double battle gym leaders, leading with Volbeat and Illumise, whose buffs I've already gone over. Volbeat does have Thunder, but with my Butterfree's Wakan Berry, I'll hopefully only see status moves from him. My plan is simple. Keep Armaldo safe to demolish the first half of the fight. It unfortunately goes off the rails right away, as Volbeat outspeeds my Butterfree and chunks Armaldo's health with Thunder. Armaldo is now baiting a kill, but that actually gives me tempo as I protect it while setting up a Tailwind with Butterfree. Illumise outspeeds Armaldo, even in Tailwind, thank you Brave Nature and 7 Speed IV, so I protect Armaldo with Rage Powder and launch another Rock Slide. Volbeat heals itself, but Illumise goes down. While I wasn't happy with only getting 1 kill at first, this turned out to be the best possible outcome, as Berg sends in Yanmega. Tailwind's still up, so Armaldo's free to take 2 more kills with Rock Slide. However, I do know it's waiting for me in the back, so to prepare, I bring in my Combuskin. I am very glad to see Scizor and Dustox. Berg's biggest threat didn't hit the field, which leaves me free to set up the first of the 2 Bulk Ups I need. Setup isn't entirely removed in Vintage White, but it's heavily restricted. Bulk Up only has 2 power points. Also, I mentioned earlier that Blaziken does get Speed Boost, but that doesn't apply to Combuskin. Scizor, unfortunately, didn't see the kill on Armaldo thanks to my held Babiri Berry, so he sets up a Swords Dance as my Tailwind expires. Combuskin needs a second bulk up, and Scizor actually is sturdy in this fight anyway, so I do need someone to switch into the left slot, and I choose Mightyena to curb Scizor's Swords Dance with Intimidate. And the Tanga Berry comes in clutch. I equipped that thing on a whim. That was still a 50-50 for Mightyena to die, but with that over with, the win is basically guaranteed. Mightyena baits with Protect for a turn, giving Combuskin the room to fire off 2 Flame Wheels, then use Pluck to Oko the Heracross in the back. Dustox is easily 2v1'd, and we're off to Nimbasa. 2 fights bar me from 5 new encounters. The first, against Bianca, is no problem at all minus finding an answer for her Bannet. This will be a common theme throughout this run. Bannet got comically buffed in this hack, being a Ghost Dark type with a lot of power, improved bulk, and literally no weaknesses. I have a Bannet myself, and it's great in the hands of the player, but even more threatening in the hands of the enemy, at least for now. Umbra Regalia will have her time, trust me. Anyway, where was I? Oh, Sharon. This one's a bit tougher since Intimidate Manectric and Drizzle Vaporeon make leading into this fight a bit tricky. Tricky enough that both of my leads are designed to literally just switch out on turn 1. With Sandslash now baiting priority moves for 2 turns, Cacturne is able to kill both of Sharon's water types, and from there, it's a cleanup operation. Now for my encounters. Mind Break the Kabuto was exciting, but then I found out I missed my third 50-50 for crit immunity. Flesh Hand the Rhyhorn is another ground type, and quite the powerful one despite having almost minimum attack. She'll be useful. The Guardian the Raichu is the most exciting of these pickups, just by virtue of having static for increased odds at 2 incredibly broken electric types. Diffractor Blaster, the soon-to-be Adaptability type Typhlosion, takes the crown as the most powerful Pokemon in my box, a title he'll literally never relinquish. Finally, Staff of Unleashed Ocean the Totodile doesn't roll Intimidate, making him a lot less useful than he could be, even as a Water Dark for Alligator. Anyway, Elisa. This double battle is definitely a step up over Berg, featuring 2 of Vintage White's most broken Pokemon. Her Electric Steel Electrode is nothing short of a Glass Death Star Super Laser, and the Focus Sash will be pretty tough to deal with since I have nothing with Fake Out. And then there's the Pidgeot. The No-Guard, Life Orb, Electric Flying Pidgeot with Hurricane and Thunder that can and will run over entire teams if you don't protect your moves perfectly, and even sometimes if you do. Since this doesn't fit anywhere else in the script, I'll go over a central mechanic in double battles here. If an opposing Pokemon sees a kill in one slot but not the other, it will always target that slot. That doesn't help much with Pidgeot though, as she'll see kills on entire teams if you don't plan perfectly. Surprisingly though, as I lead the fight with Swampert and Kingler, the latter here to bait kills from Elisa's entire team, I've come up with a plan that's pretty much completely airtight. I protect Kingler, giving me free reign to click Bulldoze with Swampert. The only way this fight could possibly go wrong is if Bulldoze crits Minun right now. Okay, so we're steering. This isn't bad yet. Pidgeot is at least guaranteed to Thunder the Kingler slot, who I switch out for Sandslash. I mentioned Pidgeot sees a kill on like 90% of every Pokemon in the game, but Swampert is the rare exception, being barely outside of range from even Max Roll Hurricane. Slime King Slasher is completely safe here and can fire off a Rock Tomb to deal a good chunk of damage to Pidgeot and get a vital speed drop. This turn is extremely important. Pidgeot needs to die next turn, but killing her this turn would be disastrous, as that would leave Swampert wide open for a hit from Elisa's back line next turn and throw off my entire plan. However, Rock Tomb and Aqua Jet both don't deal enough damage to guarantee the kill with Swampert's follow-up. Sandslash is at least always protecting. Despite being neutral, Pidgeot sees a guaranteed kill with Hurricane. After thinking it over, I decide that risking the crit is still less likely to go wrong than any other play. I click Waterfall and Protect, and watch as Swampert fires a potentially lethal blow into Pidgeot, and she holds. The fight is back on track. I Waterfall Pidgeot again for the kill as Sandslash switches out into Rhyperior. Pidgeot dies, and with the 2 Pokemon I have out, no matter which slot Elisa looks at for deciding who to send in, she'll always pick Magnezone, seeing an effective 360 base power Energy Ball. However, both Swampert and Rhyperior are holding Rindo Berries, and with a very slight pre-damage on Rhyperior, she's baiting a guaranteed kill from Flash Cannon. Swampert gets the 2 KO with help from Rhyperior's Protect and Plusle's Rain Dance, ending the interaction with Kingler out. The glass Death Star super laser is out, and I'm banking on the AI prioritizing kill over exploding. Swampert clicks Waterfall, and Electrode went for the kill right into Protect. A follow-up Aquajet takes out Elisa's final threat, and Swampert bowls over the Manectric in the back, and the plus 11 might be useless for the entire fight for a nearly damageless Elisa. I can't say that I deserve my deathless Lenora or Berg, given how close some of my Pokemon came to death in both. I can say that I deserved this. To Driftvale! Part 3. Shifting Sands. One significantly easier battle with Sharon later, and I'm in Driftvale, the site of 4 new encounters. Leading with a static Raichu increases the odds of me encountering the only electric type in Driftvale drawbridge to just over 50%, and I win the coin flip, getting myself a Pidgeotto. I win a second coin flip as Voltaic Chain has no guard. Quick Feet is still a really good ability, but no guard is just better. Fishing in Driftvale City grants me Eilish the Whalmer, whose evolution has been massively buffed, sporting absurd bulk at the cost of being reduced to 1 base speed. Shaking Grass at Cold Storage gives me a massive win, Destruction Cannon the Snorlax, who doesn't require much more explanation, minus getting Slack Off from the Mover Learner once I make it to Mistralton. Finally, the fake Pokeballs on Route 5 have been changed to Pineco, and I get myself a pretty bad one, with awful HP and defense IVs. Twin Rangs is still a Pineco though, and one with Sturdy. There's something worth mentioning about Cold Storage, where the game forces me next. The design philosophy for the optional fights in Vintage White is to make them brutally difficult 6 Pokemon fights you're punished for not avoiding, and the same philosophy applies to all the workers in Cold Storage. However, 2 of them aren't optional. I had to prep hard for these 2 fights, which, to give some context, includes a Shadow Tag Gengar. Once I'm through though, it's time for Clay. Despite being a single battle, Clay is my pick for this game's second hardest gym leader. Clay's entire gym takes place in Permanent Sandstorm, one of the many ways it echoes Emerald Kaizo, making Clay's already extremely threatening team that much more terrifying. Every member of his team is a problem, headed up by a ground-fighting Dugtrio with absurdly buffed attack, backed up by 2 Pokemon with perfectly accurate Rockhead Head Smash, and anchored by a Regirock with 2 recoil moves. I'd like to congratulate Natsuiku for the first time ever, making a Regirock scary for me to face. Beating one in sand this early into the game with this moveset is not something most Pokemon can do. I can probably handle the rest of his team most of the time, but that Regirock is something I have no perfect answer for. It'll be coming out last though, so enjoy the rest of the fight. Clay leads with an Intimidate Tyranitar, the first of many, and I lead with Pidgeotto. Kingler comes in on the Resisted Rock Slide, then has to hit the first of 2 Meteor Mashes required for me to make it out of this fight. Kingler pulls through, baiting Dugtrio. Kingler's Shell item lets me circumvent Arena Trap, switching into Butterfree and winning a 50-50 to break the trio's Focus Sash with a Rocky Helmet. Swampert can switch into the Aerial Ace and KO with Aquajet, bringing in Clay's Armaldo. Even with Fortress's tragic IVs, he's still a hard counter to Armaldo, unless he flinches. With my fights line off track, I decide to switch out into Swampert, who can revenge kill with Aquajet and bait Sudowoodo. Pivoting through Pidgeotto on the baited Woodhammer gets Kingler in on Head Smash, doing a disgusting amount of damage. Kingler sends the second and final 95% accurate Meteor Mash he needs to hit at Sudowoodo and doesn't disappoint. Aggron is second last, and with my team as chipped as it is, I see no other option than to send Sandslash directly on its superpower, dealing a massive chunk of damage to my only hope against Clay's Anchor. Nakaka kills with Earthquake, leaving only Regirock. There's only one hope Sandslash has. I need to keep clicking Earthquake until one of us is dead. I expected Sandslash to die there, and I was prepared to accept the sacrifice. Beyond that crit though, Sandvale could have always bailed me out. At the end of the day, an undeserved flawless victory is always the best kind. I've had a surprisingly easy time with Vintage White so far. Its random trainers haven't been nearly as punishing as Reborns or even Radical Reds, and I've had decent solutions for every boss fight so far. Now though, the game starts to really amp up as I head towards Chargestone Cave, thrashing Bianca on the way out, and toward a fateful encounter. The trainers and plasma grunts here are each incredibly tricky. There's a Destiny Bond Cacturne I did not lose my Kingler to, another Shadow Tag Gengar, a huge power Ariados, and a Sun team including an adaptability Typhlosion, where Swift Swim Armaldo gets to chain some kills. I make my way through the grunts without any issues, however, and open up the bottom floor of Chargestone Cave. I once again leave a static Raichu, and... please give a warm welcome to the best Pokemon in Vintage White, the Penetrator, the Voltorb. Electrode has been buffed to a truly mind-bending degree in this hack. Not only is it a Steel type, not only does it have Lightning Rod, not only does it basically have the offensive stats of Deoxys normal, but its move pool is insane. Volt Switch, Flash Cannon, Energy Ball for some reason, Earth Power from the Mover Learner for some reason, and the Kicker. By delaying its evolution, I managed to pick up Zap Cannon before the Skyla level cap, which in this game was changed from a coin flip paralysis move to a 140 base power special Volt Tackle. Do you want to see how strong this thing is? Here's a killing 4 of N's Pokemon back-to-back, most of them with neutral damage. Blaziken finishes off the fight, finally getting me to Miss Charlton City, and with it, the Mover Learner. This is something I've dearly missed, allowing me the flexibility to delete a lot of tech moves and HMs I've been keeping on my movesets, most notably Cacturne. Electrode and Kingler also get serious upgrades to the movesets immediately. At this point, the only thing holding Electrode back is literally just XP management. Of course, it can't do everything alone, and so I pick up their 2 remaining encounters I've just unlocked. Devious Aestheticus the Jinx from Route 6, my first Ice type and a Great Glass Cannon, and Scythian Fist the Duskull from the Celestial Tower, who doesn't merit any further discussion. What does merit discussion is a cameo from Lyn. This surprise visit from the Reward Region's resident terrorist gives me a perfect opportunity to show off how terrifying it can be to face Bandit. Mightyena then sucker punches the Starmie into oblivion, chain-killing Lyn's own Jinx, and finishing off an uneventful sparring session with the familiar Mordant Urchin. Skyla, as is tradition for Gen 5 ROM hacks, is a triple battle, making the fight incredibly chaotic by default. Flying moves can hit the entire field, Pokemon with Earthquake act like they've been possessed by Sin about 2/3 of the time, and Skyla just has a lot of firepower besides that. I've seen this fight done in 2 turns, but that line was incredibly risky, needing both Skyla and the trainer's own Pokemon to cooperate to pull it off cleanly. After delaying Pidgeot's evolution all the way to the level cap to get Thunder, I sat down with my box and thought things over, and what I came up with was this. Enjoy. With Jinx in the middle and pre-damaged, all of Skyla's Pokemon see a kill in either Jinx, Electrode, or both. Those 2 protect, leaving Pidgeot free to set up Tailwind. From there, it's a triple kill. Electrode kills Gyarados through a Wakan Berry with Life Orb Thunderbolt, Pidgeot outspeeds Crobat with Tailwind to frag with No-Guard Thunder, and Jinx also abuses Tailwind to clean up Dodrio with Never Melt Ice boosted Ice Beam. Jinx needed to be in the middle to remove any RNG surrounding how Skyla sends out her backline. She can always kill Gliscor with a second Ice Beam, and with my 2 electric types here to frag Skyla, Swallow, and Aerodactyl, a riskless 3-turn clear of Skyla is complete. Can't say that every day about a triple battle. Elisa was definitely my favorite line of the run, but this is a contender for second place. There's one more fight that guards me from laking, my second to last fight with Sharon. Unfortunately for the kid, his team, along with 90% of the teams in this game, has a crippling weakness to Electrode. After a special attack boost, the Penetrator chain kills Manectric, Swampert, Vaporeon, Metagross, and Snorlax, all without holding an item. Pidgeot finishes off the Crobat, unlocking access to no less than 6 new encounters, with 3 more being only 2 trainers away. It's time to kick this run into overdrive. Part 4. Platinum Star. The Surf HM first grants me access to Route 7, where I fish up a guaranteed Water Dragon Lapras. Unfortunately, I miss my 4th Shell Armor coin flip of the run, and Naval Rust Rifle rolls Ice Body, relegating him to the box for the rest of the run. My Route 18 encounter, however, is much more exciting, as Bannock gets dethroned as the 2nd best Pokemon in my box. Phantasmalicia Cthulhu has received attack and speed buffs while retaining Pure Power, making him the single best physical nuke in the game. Quite unfortunately, mine came with a modest nature and an attack IV of 10, which will matter much later into the run, but this Medicham is still an absolute monster. Taking Shaking Grass on P2 Labs gives me exactly what I'm looking for. Gemini Glaives, the Kangaskhan. My box is full enough that utility is what I was looking for, and a second Fake Out Pokemon alongside Raichu was the best thing I could have gotten from there. Please ignore the Chansey. With my surfing expedition over, I head to some caves next. Twist Mountain gives me Dark Tome, the nearly minimum attack Golbat. The Guidance Chamber guides me to Prime Staff the Lairon, who never left my box. And Mistralton Cave proper hands out Mounted Acorn Gun the Onyx, who promptly dies to the literal next trainer. Unceremonious way to mark the first death of the run, but honestly, I'm glad to be relieved of the non-existent pressure to beat this game deathless. Anyway, there's surprisingly only 2 mandatory trainers in Twist Mountain, and in fact maybe that first one is optional, so the path to Ysirus City is uneventful from there. 3 more encounters await. Slime-slinging Slasher, the long-awaited Magikarp from Ysirus City, the Snowball Effect, the Skill Link Shelder from Route 8, that's 5, and the Baron's Tusk, the Poliwhirl from the Moor of Ysirus. Decent grab bag of encounters in general. I really wanted that Crobat, even if this run's inability to get crit immunity is genuinely hilarious at this point. Anyway, Bryson. The last double battle gym leader, and the one I had the worst plan for. You'll see what I mean. Despite the Regice commanding attention, my early plans are actually focused around Glaceon and his held Bright Powder. I've seen a lot of people risk their runs on hitting through a Bright Powder here, but I wanted to eliminate that 10% chance to lose. My method of doing that was no guard Pidgeot. Volt Switch chips the Glaceon while Poliwrath sets up with Belly Drum, and Kingler takes a few ice moves. Thanks to Kingler's Wakanberry, targeting is consistent this turn and I can safely bring Pidgeot back in, setting up a double kill. Pidgeot uses Focus Blast to take down the rest of Glaceon's health bar without any chances of missing, and Poliwrath Drain Punches Regice, killing it in one hit and healing him not as much as I thought. With Jinx and Lapras out, I have no choice but to Mach Punch the Jinx and protect Pidgeot. Chip damage is building up on Poliwrath though, which becomes an insanely big problem as Frostlass comes in. After running the calcs, I realize I severely screwed up. Frostlass sees kills on both slots. I have no choice but to hard switch into Starmie, but that leaves me with a straight up 50% chance to lose the run right here and now. Starmie switches in, and Frostlass targets the left side. Power Gem crit would have killed, yes, but let's not worry about that. Blizzard does another chunk, but Poliwrath Drain Punches Lapras, killing him in one hit even without super effective damage. The fight's over at this point. Starmie baits kills consistently from Frostlass, Poliwrath Drain Punches the Walrein in the back, and a double switch into Snorlax and Electro gets me the clean Oko and Frostlass for the least deserved deathless victory I've seen since my Run and Bun Elite Four. With that failure of planning out of the way, I turn my attention toward Dragon Spiral Tower, where the only option that makes sense for my box is to roll the first floor. There's one encounter here that I've got my eye on above all else. One encounter that would be an insane boon for my chances at beating the Elite Four, the last real challenge left for this run. One encounter that I end up hitting. Sparkling Love, the Battle Armor Tyranitar. I've finally got it! The Plasma Grunts in Dragon Spiral Tower and Relic Castle are no challenge at all, even this late in the game. There's one fight where you take on 4 Grunts back-to-back who bring Jirachi and the 3 Reggies, but Choice Specs Typhlosion can Oko 3 of those, and Medicham is a one-slot solution to Regirock. At this point, I start to switch into a more offensive gear. With Bryson down and Dragon Spiral Tower cleared, there are very few obstacles left between me and the Elite Four, and I can start making some sacrifices to keep my more important pieces safe. Going into my final fight with Bianca, this time a double battle in the rain, I've brought 2 offerings to Box 8. Before then though, Close Combat cooks the lead for Alligator even after Intimidate, and the Penetrator blasts Bianca's Bayonet off the field for the final time. With Magcargo and Tyranitar on the field though, it's time to say goodbye to Staff of Unleashed Ocean and the Lightning Rod. I don't think either has hit the field during a major boss fight, and I needed the tempo reset to get my heavy hitters in position to clean up Bianca's backline. With my death count tripled though, I'm through to Opelousas City, where Iris stands only a few trainers away. In my path though, is an actual gauntlet that takes its cues from Vanilla. These 3 trainers actually have to be fought with the same team of 6 even in Vanilla Pokemon White, and here in Vintage White, they're bringing 4 tough Pokemon each. I had to pick my team quite carefully. I do have a piece to bring that helps a ton with a lot of the biggest threats. Diffractor Blaster, now equipped with Blastburn. Blastburn won't come into play here, but it'll be very important soon. Earth Power Access also lets him chain kill the Zagron, even in sand. Flygon is next up, and pivoting through Fortress confirms Flamethrower into Starmie, who outspeeds and kills with Ice Beam. The Tyranitar in back is hit with the most overkill close combat I have ever seen in my life, courtesy of Medicham. For the next fight, Typhlosion once again removes the lead from play with Flamethrower, bringing in Dragonite unexpectedly. I forgot he baits Surf. This is, thankfully, an easy 1v1 with Wailord. Venusaur, on the other hand, is a problem when baited out of order, evidenced by him putting Typhlosion to sleep. Crobat's a nice backup check though, and he wins the 1v1. I kill with U-turn to give Wailord an extra round of leftovers recovery, useful as he stalls the Kingdra in the back out of Draco Meteor PP with Protect and Rest, eventually completing his second stall of the fight. The last fight starts off simply enough. Starmie deletes the lead Salamence with Ice Beam. Sceptile's next, and Crobat's the only counter my box has ever had to Sceptile's. He switches in on the Fake Out turn and one-shots with a 100% accurate Fly. Finally, Medicham switches in on the baited Head Smash from Relicanth, barely not dying to a crit, and chain kills first the fish with Close Combat, then the final Altaria with Ice Punch. With the gauntlet behind me, I turn my attention to Iris. I initially underestimated Iris, but that was because I assumed I could just sacrifice my way through her. After looking at my box, that is far from the case. I consider Iris the hardest gym leader and maybe the hardest fight in Vintage White. She's facing me in another triple battle, but one with far less exploitable weaknesses and much stronger Pokemon when compared to Skyla. Her front line's tough enough, but the back line is where the real problems lie, consisting of 2 Water Dragon types I simply do not have any counters for without any good strong Dragon types, and a Choice Band multi-scale Dragonite with extreme speed that threatens to tear through my entire team if I don't kill it quickly, and who is simply impossible for any Pokemon to kill quickly. I'll admit something here. I had the beginnings of the plan laid out since well before I got to this point. It took me quite a while to refine it to where it could be something I'm proud of, but I'm happy with the result. Without further ado though, I'd like to proudly present the second greatest Galaxy Studios cook to date, only behind my Titania fight in Reborn. Against Iris' lead of Flygon, Metagross, and Salamence, I lead with Typhlosion, Jinx, and Pidgeot. All 3 leads see kills on at least one member of my team, and none see any kills in Pidgeot, so just like with Skyla, I double protect and Tailwind, giving me the speed advantage I need to kick my offense into overdrive. Diffractor Blaster lives up to his name, opening the turn by using Blast Burn. Echoing Emerald Kaizo, Notsuigu has changed a ton of recharge and stat-dropping moves to be recall moves with perfect accuracy, and Blast Burn is one of them, slaughtering Metagross even through an Octoberry. The Metagross had Bullet Punch, but a Babiri Berry on Jinx prevented Iris from going for that particular move to kill her. After some Volt Switch Chippage from Pidgeot, bringing a very low HP Raichu onto the field, Jinx takes the second kill of the turn, finishing off Salamence through her own Yache Berry. Unfortunately, this turn will host a third kill, and it's Flygons. I couldn't route a triple kill with my box, and something had to go to give me the tempo I needed. It's a shame Typhlosion was the only expendable mon in my box who could have one-shot the Metagross while being fast enough and baiting the kill from Flygon. Diffractor Blaster, you were a legend. Pidgeot gets switched back in on Typhlosion's slot as Iris, seeing the higher base power moves from Kingdra and Blastoise when compared to Dragonite, leaves her scariest mon in the back. My priority now is getting as much damage as possible in Iris' middle slot, Kingdra. Raichu clicks Fake Out and Pidgeot clicks Volt Switch into that slot, getting Kangaskhan on the field. Jinx ends my actions by getting her second kill of the battle with a quad-effective Ice Beam. Kingdra flinches, and Blastoise ends the turn off by drawing Second Blood with Flash Cannon. This sacrifice was, once again, necessary for tempo. Raichu honestly didn't do much in battle, but trust me when I say I wouldn't have gotten this far without my Guardian. Iris finally brings out Dragonite, as planned, and I go into my 3 HP Medicham. Since he's baiting kills from all 3 slots, Medicham protects. Kangaskhan and Jinx are free to nip this Dragonite's damage potential in the bud, using Fake Out and Ice Beam respectively, the former both breaking multi-scale and preventing an extreme speed from potentially taking Jinx out. Iris' water types behave, and I'm free to go all out for my last turn. Dark Gem Sucker Punch does an unnecessary mana chip to Kingdra, Reversal from Medicham cleanly OHKOs Blastoise, even fighting Gym Close Combat wouldn't have done it, and Jinx ends a nearly flawless fight by Psycho Boosting the Kingdra into Oblivion. This fight was almost riskless, and could have been riskless. The only loss condition was Blastoise clicking Hydro Pump and missing against Raichu, a loss condition that I could have avoided by pre-poisoning her. Even then, I probably could have steered. It felt so good to break her team apart despite the cost. Elisa might have been my favorite line of the run, but this is the one I'm most proud of. To Victory Road. Part 5. Laevateinn. With the level cap at 100, I'm finally freed from experience management, and the game sees fit to remind me of this by setting Charon's team in the mid-90s. Unfortunately, Suicune also saw fit to give his Manectric choice specs, a decision I wholeheartedly made him regret by farming special attack boosts on my Electrode, who proceeds to literally outspeed Noko his entire team, including Snorlax. I did need Tailwind for this Swift Swim Swampert though. Following him though, are the actually tough fights. After taking out a couple more scrubs, I enter Victory Road and face a fairly tough string of fights with 6 Pokemon to level 100. My box is good enough at this point that not only did I get through these fights cleanly, I only sacrificed one Pokemon, Mahogany, against a Choice Band Salamence to preserve my line for the other 5 threats on the opposing team. Fortress probably could have tanked 2 crits, if not for the IVs. Still, I power through, and get to show off Bannett's new toy against the last fight blocking me from the league, veteran Martel. He brings only 2 Pokemon, but they're Soldu, Latios, and Latios. Banette, though, is here to bring the pain with Night Days, which Suicune changed to 140 base power Dark-type Flare Blitz. 2 clicks later, and I'm through to the league. This is, in my opinion, the hardest part of Vintage White. Even with only 4 fights to do back-to-back, this league is coming at me with some of the strongest Pokemon in the game. Chantal has 2 incredibly buff Ghost Dark types, another adaptability Kecleon that is still very scary to switch into even this late in the game, and a Zangoose that would love to tear its way through any team with toxic boosted facades and crazy coverage. Grimsley's packing a deadly Sniper Crobat with Aura Sphere, a nasty Plot Houndoom, a Magic Guard Psychic Dark Grumpig, a Technician Weavile because why not, and the last Intimidate Tyranitar of the run. Marshall's been changed to a Ground Specialist, with some incredibly heavy hitters in Sheer Force Life Orb Kingler, Yachi Berry Flygon, and Rindo Berry Swampert. Finally, Caitlyn's the fight I'm the most scared of, with a comically buffed Drowsy with Eviolite and Dark Void, a Magic Guard Focus Sash Alakazam, a Slack-Off Snorlax with Curse that it's basically impossible to answer consistently, and a Girafarig that inspires my killing urges. It's a tough league for sure, but one that I was considering my plans for from the moment I got that Tyranitar in Dragon Spiral Tower. First up, and designated to lead on the first fight, is my starter, Dragon's Breath, the Blaziken. Though we've been through a lot together, and I'd love to say she's a core piece, she's really here as a stopgap. There's one Pokemon that requires specific answers to take down, and of the Pokemon in my box who could have done it, Blaziken was the most expendable one that also fulfilled other roles throughout the league. There is a chance she'll live, though. Twinrangs, the Fortress. Slow Volt Switch is always incredible, but he's actually here for his combat profile. With buff special attack, Fortress will be my man on the job for 2 Pokemon I need to throw Bug Buzzes at until they go down. There's also a specific utility job in one fight that only he can do. Voltaic Chain, the Pidgeot. His job is to switch into stuff, outspeed with a Choice Scarf, and kill with super effective coverage. His defensive profile, typing, and ability line up perfectly to fill the roles I need him to fill. Sparkling Love the Tyranitar, which shouldn't come as that much of a surprise. Pseudo-legendary stats with Battle Armor mean Tyranitar has nothing to fear from any Pokemon her stats even give a remotely good matchup against, while also baiting fighting and ground moves expertly into my resists. If I only had to get one crit immune Pokemon, I'm glad it was her. Umbra Regalia the Banette, the MVP of this run. Despite everything Electrode's done in the second half, we wouldn't have gotten there without that Chupa encounter I had in Not Pinwheel Forest. Banette has gotten better and better over the course of this run, as I found more and more opportunities to use her defensive profile in blisteringly strong priority to my advantage, and with Shadow Force and Night Days to play with, using her in the Elite Four is gonna be fun. Finally, Phantasmal Leash of Cthulhu, the modest 10 attack IV Medicham, the best Pokemon in my Elite Four team. You'll see why. On the other side of the league awaits a back-to-back with N and Ghetsis. I'll have an opportunity to build a new team for this, but that doesn't make it much easier. N has a Blaziken threatening Gokos in my entire team, a stupidly bulky Dragonite that's basically impossible to switch into, and the dual anchors of Gut Slacking and Focus Sash Ditto. Ghetsis, meanwhile, leads with a Shadow Tag Gengar and has 5 hard hitters in the back. I won't spoil his ace. If I make it through the Elite Four while protecting my important pieces, I have, almost exactly, a 93% chance at victory. Now, if you want to view the Elite Four VOD with live commentary, I'll upload that as a separate video for my members. If you want to support me financially so I can keep doing this, or just want to say thank you, go right ahead. If you can't afford it, then feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. For now, though, it's time to turn things over to Piano Galaxy as I make my way through the gates and challenge the last fights of Pokemon Vintage White. Here's hoping I'm good enough. Part 6. Steel Red. Here's the situation. Extreme Speed has one killing roll on me. In order to win this fight, Guessets needs to find the killing roll of Extreme Speed and then have that Extreme Speed kill, which you can achieve with either that max roll or a crit. Well, these are over 1 in 100 odds to lose. Even then, I still have Sandslash in the back. I still have Crobat in the back. Still have Pidgeot. I still have options. But it starts here. Bring it home, Penetrator. And that's Vintage White! Only one question left. Is my ace gonna die to recoil? 4 HP. And that's it. I'm not gonna lie, with this being as short of a game as it is, I didn't really have that big of a pop-off. Especially when my champion was planned as much as it was. Especially when it wasn't my strategy. And I think that speaks to something about me that I finally realized. I've been Nuzlocking for about 4 years now. On my channel, I teased a Pokemon White Nuzlocke for the better part of a year. I had an entire playthrough recorded, a script written, every piece of dialogue spoken, but I just couldn't go through with the editing. Instead, when Pokemon Run and Bun came out, I decided to set a different kind of challenge, beating every fight in the game deathless with sandbox lock encounter rules. What happened with that video speaks for itself, and I'm glad I made it if nothing else, even if I look back at the script and see plenty of ways I could have done better. What happened after that video, however, is something I haven't gone into that much, and something I'm going to open up about now, because the Hardcore Nuzlocke community, to put it bluntly, has not been kind to me, for reasons that can mostly be pinned on my own actions. Over the following months, through the time I spent in Dex's Den, I slowly but surely annoyed most of the notable members of the community to the point where they didn't want anything to do with me, eventually calling me out for trying to insert myself into every conversation possible while not having completed a Nuzlocke of Run and Bun myself. Safety Man 420 even accused me of selling my video as a challenge run on par with the Hardcore Nuzlocke challenge. That, combined with his response to some controversy regarding Ordo 26's win, led me to publicly calling him out in the finale of my Radical Red New Game Plus streams about a year and a half ago. As a side note, now that the actual worst member of the Nuzlocke community is known, I'd like to formally apologize for that. I've done some thinking about the situation, and I've come to realize something about myself that's the true explanation for my actions that led to my reputation in the community, and the reason why I keep leaving and rejoining Dex's Den. It's a character flaw that I'm working on, but the best remedy I have for it is just to stay out of the server and check what's going on occasionally. If there's any conversation going on in an online space that I feel I could contribute to in any way, I have a hard time staying silent, and an even harder time not trying to make the conversation about me. I interject with my own lines when some of my favorite fights in Run and Bun are being discussed. I chime in with how I brute forced my way through the Elite Four. I mention how I had to win a 1-4 against the Slateport Aquagrunts. I bring up my line against Penguin Bridge Rival that works 80% of the time, 50% of the time, over and over and over. It's a problem, but it's one that I've hopefully solved at this point. Still though, even with everything I just said, I'm not entirely to blame. I can't ignore some things that were said about me, particularly by Bach Nation, and so we return to the question I posed at the start of the video. Who is the best Nuzlocker in the world? If you've noticed anything during this video, it's that a lot of the strategies I used took heavily from another run of Vintage White completed 3 years ago. My encounter luck just lined up well enough that I could borrow and even improve a lot of those lines. That does speak to something about me as a Nuzlocker, though, and that's that I'm more of an optimizer than an innovator. I'm good at rearranging tiles inside a box to be more compact, but I have troubles forming the shapes myself. My early game run and bun strategies borrowed a lot from Katsune Niku, and my Elite Four team was based off of Kroven's template. My Radical Red lines, at least for my first runs, were mostly based on Pichao's run. My Renegade Platinum video, which can be found unlisted in one of the playlists on my channel, took inspiration from a source that, while I will say I'm not ashamed to have used in the past, obviously won't ever be using again on account of me being a normal person with morals. I made it explicitly clear in my Reborn video that a lot of lines were being taken from Saibin, with my Elite Four using a template drawn up by Nathan Mellons. And even now, this vintage white run is a laminated copy of Pichao's, albeit touched up a bit. This isn't exactly unique to me, though. Everyone helps each other, and strategies are always being improved for each game. That kind of throws a wrench in the question, though, and that realization came with an idea. Perhaps I should look at this question from a different angle. Instead of who's most skilled in Nuzlocking, which I would probably give to 3 plates, who's the most moral person who calls himself a Nuzlocker? And with that, I had my answer. About a year ago, I publicly cut ties with the Hardcore Nuzlocking community, calling out Safety Man in the process. The break from deck cord has been healthy for me, and I don't think it'll end soon, though I do plan to Nuzlocke Runabout eventually. There is one thing I neglected to mention, though. Out of every notable figure in the community who's ever interacted with me, there was only one who reached out to me following that stream and who offered kind words in the wake of my crash out. Only one who just so happens to be in the conversation for the straightforward answer to the question. So, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Terra is the best Nuzlocker in the world, and he's just released a game. Pokemon Null is a game I'm going to play soon. There's a very good chance I stream some attempts at a hardcore Nuzlocke. It's got everything I want in a Pokemon ROM hack. Creative fights, inventive mechanics, and best of all, a complete lack of a Hall of Fame sheet. Those have been nothing but bad for the community, and I hope other hacks follow suit and that this game signals the end of the era of the sheet. The game Terra's been working on for the past 2 years deserves exposure, especially since its release got sideswept by Platinum Kaizo. There's one more item on the chopping block beforehand, though. I just spent about a minute talking about how I'm better at optimizing than innovating. Well, a new popular game just came out, the strategies haven't been figured out yet, and even with the warm-up I just got through Vintage White, I don't think I'm quite ready for Null just yet. So, here's a promise. By the end of this year, I'll have beaten Platinum Kaizo deathless. Bye, guys.